This happened in 2022. I wasn't prepared for how loud life gets when it's just you and a newborn in an old Baltimore apartment. The building was brick outside and thin plaster inside, which basically meant every sound belonged to everyone. I was newly single, working remote 3 days a week for a nonprofit, and measuring time in ounces. 4 ounces bought me 30 minutes. 2 ounces meant we were up again before the microwave beeped. The place was a third-floor walk-up. My unit had a narrow living room, a galley kitchen that looked into brick, and a small bedroom where the crib fit only if I turned it sideways. A radiator rattled when it felt like it. The hallway carpet was worn thin from decades of footsteps, and the walls showed cracks that spiderwebbed from the corners like the building was slowly coming apart. The first month was a fog. I love my daughter completely, but I also said I can't do this to the sink more times than I'll admit. The first time he yelled, she was 4 weeks old. She had one of those mysterious nighttime cries, not hunger or a wet diaper, just fury at existing. I walked her around the living room when someone pounded the wall so hard my framed print tilted. Then a man's voice came clear through the drywall. "Shut it up." I froze, stunned. My daughter paused, then started crying harder. I whispered, "I'm trying," though I knew he couldn't hear me. I thought it could have just been a bad moment from a tired neighbor, but it happened again. Not every night, but enough. Every time she cried too long, he'd hit the wall and shout. First it was, "Quiet that thing," then "Make it stop." His voice carried a hard edge, sometimes slurred, sometimes sharp. I tried everything. White noise machines, rolled towels at the baseboards, moving the crib to the far wall. I spoke in whispers after dark. Nothing helped. The yelling got under my skin in a way I hadn't expected. My daughter was too little to understand, but to me, it felt like someone was cursing her for existing. Then came the first note, folded, wedged in my doorframe. "Teach your baby manners." Blue ballpoint, cramped letters. I snapped a photo, put it on top of the fridge, and emailed my landlord. She said babies cry, it was normal, and to let her know if it escalated. The next note said, "If you won't control it, I will call someone who can." This one taped right to my screen door. I photographed it too. My sister told me to start a paper trail and get a camera. The third note chilled me, printed neatly on a computer. "I know when you feed her. 1 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 5 a.m. At the bottom, a coffee ring. He wasn't just annoyed anymore. He was keeping track. I finally decided to confront him. At 9 in the morning, baby strapped to my chest, I knocked. He opened the door like the knock insulted him. He was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, with gray skin and a crab t-shirt. He looked at my baby first, then at me. "I live next door," I said. "I'm doing everything I can. She cries, that's what babies do. But I need you to stop yelling and stop leaving notes." "Your sorry doesn't help me sleep," he said flatly. "I moved the crib. I run white noise. I can add rugs." "You can stop it from crying," he said. "I cannot," I said. He shrugged and shut the door. For a few days, he was quiet. Then one rainy night, it started again. "Enough, pound, enough." My picture frame fell off the wall. A new note was under my welcome mat. "Move her to the kitchen where I don't hear it, or move." That night, my sister came with food and told me to call the police non-emergency line. The dispatcher said they couldn't do much unless something happened in the moment. Notes and yelling were civil. A week later, something did happen. Around 2 in the morning, while feeding my daughter, I heard my doorknob rattle. Not a knock, someone just trying to get in. I froze in the middle of the room, my heart thudding and clutching the baby. The knob turned again, then silence, except the sound of someone breathing just outside the door. I said, loud enough to carry, "Go away, I'm calling the police." The breathing stopped. I called 911 immediately. When officers arrived 10 minutes later, they knocked, badges up. I let them in and explained about the notes and the yelling. One officer checked the hall, then came back with a folded paper tucked in my screen door. It read, "Next time, I call child services." The officers logged it, told me to call again if anything else happened. One gave me the number for the district officer who handles landlord issues. Then they left. I didn't sleep again that night. Every sound became a footstep. The narrow hallway seemed to stretch endlessly in the dark, and I kept staring at that doorknob, waiting for it to turn again. I moved out within 3 weeks. My sister rented a van and helped me haul what I could. The landlord said the neighbor denied everything. I didn't care. I was gone. By 2016, I was 52, retired, and finally learning what quiet felt like. I left the Department of Corrections at 50. 30 years of concrete, keys, and broken promises will grind you down in ways sleep can't fix. I lived in a one-story place on the south side of Baton Rouge with a deep backyard. I kept the grass trimmed, did little projects around the shed, grilled when the Saints played, and sat out on the back steps with a cold can while Jasper, my shepherd mix, patrolled the fence line like it was his beat. I liked routine. I liked order. A man doesn't spend 3 decades walking ranges without craving a yard where things stay put. The fence had been there when I bought the place. 6-foot cypress privacy boards running the line with old chain link behind it that marked the true property boundary. I'd replaced 3 posts over the years, dug them out with an auger, and set them deep. That fence wasn't pretty, but it stood straight, and that was good enough. That spring, a guy moved in next door. Travis, late 30s, thin, shaved head, drove a lifted black pickup with tires that belonged on farm equipment. Said he did contracting, which around here could mean sheetrock, wiring, or nothing at all. Odd hours, bass lines late at night that made the boards hum. We shook hands the first week, nothing unusual. The first problem came 2 months later. I was raking magnolia leaves when I saw him stretched out with a tape measure along the back fence. He straightened up and waved me over like he'd found something important. "You know this fence is on my property," he said. I told him the truth. The fence sat a foot inside mine, leaving the easement clear so the utility company could get to the line. "Been that way since before me," I said. "My survey shows different," he said. "Show me the survey," I answered. He said he'd get it from a guy. I didn't think much of it. People love to talk about surveys they can't produce. A week later, I found 2 panels down behind the shed. Nails scattered in the dirt like teeth. Not wind damage. Hands had been there. I bolted them back with lags this time. Next morning, Jasper found a Popeyes bag tossed into the grass, grease still wet. A half-gnawed bone lying clean, untouched. Jasper would have shredded that bone if he'd gotten to it. That meant someone threw it in overnight. It kept happening. A beer bottle upright in the lawn like a marker. A smear of something rancid on the shed door. At first, I thought maybe kids cutting through, but then I set a trail camera. Day 3, the footage caught Travis in slides and gym shorts, leaning over to toss something underhand. I walked to his porch with the printouts in my hand. He opened the door with a thin smile. "Stop throwing things in my yard," I said. He shrugged. "Could be raccoons." "Raccoons don't shop for stew meat," I told him. "You keep it on your side, I won't call the sheriff." He stepped closer. "You think you can tell me what to do?" "I'm telling you not to poison my dog," I said. My voice stayed flat. Years of corrections teach you how not to give a man the reaction he's hunting for. After that, Jasper started finding little piles of raw meat along the fence line. I picked them up with gloves and a bucket, cursing while the cicadas screamed overhead. Jasper whined when I kept him leashed, ears flicking toward the fence. I set more cameras, this time up high, wired, out of reach. Got him again. Travis sliding meat under the boards like it was a game. I brought the stills to his face. He didn't deny it, just smiled that smile and called me warden. I'd never been a warden, but I knew what he meant. The shed door started showing scratches, words carved into the paint with a nail. Nothing clever, just nasty. I painted over it twice. The third time I left it, filed a report with the parish deputy. The young officer told me to keep documenting and said, "Call us if it jumps a lane." It felt like it already had. August heat baked into the ground. I was on the back steps with a can in my hand, Jasper sniffing his usual rounds. He froze near the shed, not barking, just that stiff, ears forward stare dogs do when the yard has changed. I set the can down, picked up the heavy flashlight by the door, and walked the edge with the beam off. When I flicked it on, the light caught him. Travis stood just beyond the fence, pistol hanging by his thigh. He was talking low, muttering about trespassers. "Travis," I said, "put the gun back in your house." He raised it slightly, not aiming, but not resting either. "You're on my line," he said. "I'm on mine," I told him, "and I've got you on camera." Jasper's claws tapped the porch wood, and Travis twitched the pistol toward the sound like he was pointing at a ghost. I backed to the house, dialed 911 on speaker. "Neighbor dispute with a firearm," I told dispatch. "Man armed at the fence, pointing toward my property." We waited 10 minutes. That felt longer than my whole career. Travis paced, muttering about how I had it coming. I stood in the doorway with the beam steady on his chest, not his eyes. Blue lights washed the boards. Officers ordered him to put the weapon down. He set it on the dirt and stepped back slow, like he was showing the world he knew how to act right when eyes were on him. That year, I was working as a nurse in Mobile, Alabama. After more than 20 years in healthcare, one thing you learn quick is people tell you more than you ask for. Strangers, patients, families in waiting rooms, they all unload bits of their lives. Sometimes those confessions stay behind in the hospital, and sometimes they follow you home. Back in 2020, I just moved into a small shotgun house after some of the hardest shifts of my life during the pandemic. I wanted someplace quiet with a patch of yard, a porch where I could drink coffee on mornings I wasn't scheduled. I thought I'd found it. My new place sat on a tree-lined street where most folks had lived for decades. Next door was Mrs. Cunningham, though everyone called her Miss Cunny. She was in her 70s, maybe 80s, always in a pressed blouse and a patterned scarf tied under her chin. She swept her porch every morning, even in July when the air felt like soup. She was the first to greet me. I'd be coming home in scrubs, bag slung over my shoulder, and she'd call out from her porch. We started chatting at the mailbox, short conversations at first. She asked about my hours, about the hospital. Then she always slipped in a line about her son. "He's here," she'd say, tapping the door frame. "Just shy, doesn't care for folks." She said it with a little smile, like it was an inside joke. The odd thing was, I never saw him, not once. At first, I shrugged it off. Plenty of people keep to themselves, and if her son was older and private, who was I to judge? But the house gave off little signs that nagged at me. Amazon deliveries came almost weekly. Packages clearly marked for men. Shirts, undershirts, socks, slippers. I'd see her lugging them in, stacked to her chin. At night, even when the air was mild, her attic fan hummed loud enough I could hear it from my yard. Sometimes it rattled like it hadn't been serviced in years. And once in a while, when the wind shifted, I caught a smell. Lemon cleaner mixed with something faint and sickly sweet. Didn't seem like garbage or flowers, something else. I tried to explain it away. People clean differently, houses have smells. I was a nurse. I knew how my mind could make connections I didn't want. But Miss Cunny kept talking about him. He likes peach yogurt, she said once. Another time, he's a reader, doesn't care for television. Always present tense, always as though he just stepped into the next room. One night, I was rinsing dishes at my kitchen sink. From there, I had a clear view of her attic window across the narrow side yard. The fan cord drooped like always. The glass was mostly dark, catching reflections of streetlight glow. Then something shifted. The old wooden rocking chair up there was moving, slow arcs. And in the half-light, I swore I saw a pale oval where a face should be. Shoulders too, upright like someone sitting still. The chair rocked again, then stopped. A stop that felt like whoever was sitting had seen me notice. I stood there staring until my own reflection overtook the glass. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The chair sat still. I didn't tell anyone that night. I didn't want to sound crazy, or worse, like I was gossiping about an elderly neighbor. As weeks passed, I noticed I wasn't the only one uneasy. 2 older women who walked their dogs stopped short one morning when I mentioned living next to Miss Cunny. They shared a look. One said softly, "She's been through a lot with that boy." The other nodded, but wouldn't elaborate. Later, I overheard another neighbor say something about her son being better off inside. The tone was sympathetic, but it wasn't casual. It was careful, like they were all agreeing not to pry too deep. I wanted to believe that explained it. Maybe he had medical issues. Maybe he really was just reclusive. But I kept thinking about that rocking chair, about the smell, about the endless packages. Miss Cunny herself never acted like anything was wrong. She'd bring up her son like he was just behind the wall. "He likes Layden," she told me once. Another time, "He's a reader, doesn't care for television." Always present tense, always as though he'd just stepped into the next room. One night, I was rinsing dishes at my kitchen sink. From there, I had a clear view of her attic window across the narrow side yard. The fan cord drooped like always. The glass was mostly dark, catching reflections of streetlight glow. Then something shifted. The old wooden rocking chair up there was moving, slow arcs. And in the half-light, I swore I saw a pale oval where a face should be. Shoulders too, upright like someone sitting still. The chair rocked again, then stopped. A stop that felt like whoever was sitting had seen me notice. I stood there staring until my own reflection overtook the glass. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The chair sat still. I didn't tell anyone that night. I didn't want to sound crazy, or worse, like I was gossiping about an elderly neighbor. As weeks passed, I noticed I wasn't the only one uneasy. 2 older women who walked their dogs stopped short one morning when I mentioned living next to Miss Cunny. They shared a look. One said softly, "She's been through a lot with that boy." The other nodded, but wouldn't elaborate. Later, I overheard another neighbor say something about her son being better off inside. The tone was sympathetic, but it wasn't casual. It was careful, like they were all agreeing not to pry too deep. I wanted to believe that explained it. Maybe he had medical issues. Maybe he really was just reclusive. But I kept thinking about that rocking chair, about the smell, about the endless packages. Miss Cunny herself never acted like anything was wrong. She'd bring up her son like he was just behind the wall. "He likes Layden," she told me once. Another time, "He's a reader, doesn't care for television." Always present tense, always as though he'd just stepped into the next room. One night, I was rinsing dishes at my kitchen sink. From there, I had a clear view of her attic window across the narrow side yard. The fan cord drooped like always. The glass was mostly dark, catching reflections of streetlight glow. Then something shifted. The old wooden rocking chair up there was moving, slow arcs, and in the half-light, I swore I saw a pale oval where a face should be. Shoulders, too, upright like someone sitting still. The chair rocked again, then stopped. A stop that felt like whoever was sitting had seen me notice. I stood there staring until my own reflection overtook the glass. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The chair sat still. I didn't tell anyone that night. I didn't talk about my clothes or traveling, more like business. On one hand, I wanted information. On the other, I felt sick. But the listening deals gave my boss unlimited downtime on the window of her business. So I filed it. My job was process, not judgment. Most places in my neighborhood were big, starting from sidewalks, streets, lots. A lot of it was public record. At the house name, there was strange music. A lawn, office, another lawn, then unchurch music. Most places I've researched looked like landmarks, but that one seemed special. My note said, unchurch music, digital file damage. At night, when I